What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Electric People. Hey, it's been a while since we've consistently produced content, but we're back on it. And today we have John Ruhlin on the podcast. So John is a speaker. He's an entrepreneur. He's a sales leader. Does a little bit of everything, but he's the author of this book. It's called Giftology. And we became friends through some connections. And it's basically, he's built a career around how to create and foster and nurture meaningful relationships. Not just in business, but also in life. So in this conversation, he gives, it was actually a very practical conversation. He talks about how you can use gifting and just intentionality to increase your relationships, to increase sales, and also to bring you ultimately more happiness in life. So enjoy this conversation with John Ruhlin. The street is where we create. We call it suburbanpreneurship.
Mixing big company resources with an entrepreneurial spirit.
This is Electric People.
Go.
You're out in Ohio, right?
Born and raised Ohio. Our headquarters is still Ohio, but I actually we bought 40 acres just 20 minutes outside of St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
So I'm still Midwest, middle of the country, but I'm a little different, a little further west than Ohio.
You have 40 acres, you said?
Yeah, we bought about 2 years ago. We're still rehabbing it. We're living in the place, but we 4 daughters, 16 chickens, 2 cats. It's quite the circus.
Are you guys doing like the Biggest Little Farm type setup? Have you seen that documentary?
Yeah, I've seen both of them. I would say not to that level, but I mean, we're talking about cows next, and we want animals. We want to, generator, off, a mini homestead for sure.
So you're kind of a country guy at heart, huh?
Yeah, I grew up in Ohio on 47 acres, milking goats every morning. So like I was definitely the kid that was, wearing boots that were smelly to school, and I wanted to be like, inner city. Like I also wear like the Tommy Hilfiger shirt, trying to be like I was like Snoop Dogg, but I'm definitely like, I grew up splitting wood. We heated our house with wood, like 1 acre garden. Like we worked hard.
Yeah. There's something about like country living that finds network marketing or direct sales later in life that just works. I mean, my background is at Vivint Smart Home. That's where I started. And it seems that whole company and kind of that whole industry was started by, like central Utah country kids that just learned how to work and then found this machine. You know what I mean? Yeah.
If you can embrace the suck of like getting up at 5, 6 a.m. and like dealing with animals that will die if you don't take care of them, and your hands are cold. Like I remember like, splitting wood out when it's snow on the ground, and you're like, all you want to do is like be a city kid and like, have an allowance, get paid to like take out the trash. Like I used to laugh at my friends and be like, dude, like, you have the best thing ever. I go to their house after school or something and be like, they had all the coolest snacks. We ate healthy, like no responsibilities. We had a lot. But what's funny now, I'm 43 with 4 girls. My wife and I, she grew up on a farm too, but we're going back to our roots because we want our kids to have some of those same experiences and not just be like entitled, little SOBs. Like I want them to understand what it means to take care of things.
To work and it's funny. I saw this thing by Warren Buffett that said, he's like, one of the biggest problems with kids today and their like ability to learn to work is they don't have paper routes. And it's funny because, so I grew up in Seattle, and I was talking to my son about this. I have a 14-year-old boy, and I was talking to him about this the other day, and he was like, so when did you start working? And I was like, I've kind of always worked, man, like from the little jobs around the house, but I got a paper route when I was 12, and I grew up in Seattle. And it rained. I mean, every day it rains, right? And so it's like I had to go home before all my friends, had to put the little like paper boy like bag on, had to deliver those things in the rain. And there's something about getting work done when nobody's there to supervise, right? Like it just kind of like keeps going. So I want to get into your story of how you started, like how you went from, growing up in a pretty rural area to, becoming a top seller in like a direct sales world. And then ultimately, I'd love to spend the majority of our time talking about Giftology. it's been awesome to read your book and to go through kind of like the simple concepts there, but it's really got me thinking. You probably get that a lot, but it really got me thinking about some of my relationships. So maybe tell that story. How did you go from growing up on the farm, and then it was Cutco? That was your first sales job, right?
Yeah.
Cutco's a killer company, man. There's still like, I actually just got my wife some Cutco knives like 2 years ago for Christmas. Like, it's awesome. I mean, they've been around for so long, but they're super high quality. There's a lot of great salespeople that come out of there. Look, man.
There's like the Cutco Mafia. There's been 2 million reps that have come to the company's kind of their internship college program over 75 years. And if you look at like, Hal Elrod, who wrote Miracle Morning, one of the biggest books in the world, like 33 countries, we grew up together for 20 years.
Oh, really? Because I know he did pest control.
Yeah, Hal Elrod, his first job was he sold blades. We like our wives, we traveled together, like we've known each other for over 20 years. So yeah, I mean, there's some incredible, even the whether you like them or not, started a hell of a company. The founder of Uber, Travis Kalanick, his first job at 17 was selling knives. So like, there's all of this, whether it's direct sales or MLM, or like, you can go out and like, books door to door, like Southwestern. Rory Vaden's one of my closest friends. Like, he's got a huge company in personal branding, but he started selling books. Cool. But I think, at least for me, like I never had a desire to go sell something necessarily. Like I was going to go be a doctor. Really, I was going to be a DO or a chiropractor. And when I started to do the math on med school, I was like, I'm going to go $250,000 in debt. Yeah. How am I going to make enough money so I don't go in debt that much? And so I was at a small Christian university, Malone, and I started doing the math. I'm like, I go work at like it wasn't a Starbucks. I go work at Gap, or like Abercrombie and Fitch was like the cool place to go work. Or I could go like work at a restaurant. And a buddy of mine who was a seminary student was the antithesis of a salesperson, and he got a job for Cutco. Oof. And I was like, Steve, you couldn't sell anything to anybody. How are you, like, how much are these knives? I never heard of Cutco. Yeah. And he's like, some of the sets are like, $5-10 grand. I'm like, you might as well have said $5 or $10 million. Yeah. Like, in my head, it just, as a 20-year-old, it didn't compute. And I was like, have you sold any? And he's like, I sold a set last night. So I literally was like, if Steve Wiggers can do it, this antithesis seminary kid, was a buddy of mine from high school. So I wore my glasses to look smarter in the interview. I was nervous. I wore my one tie that I had to go to the interview, and I get hired. And I went to my mom, and my mom was one of 13 kids. And I was like, Mom, here's what I'm going to do to pay for med school. My mom's like, none of our friends can afford those knives. You're going to go, like, you're never going to sell anything. Not exactly the pep talk you're looking for from your mom, but she was just being honest. Like, that in her head, it just didn't compute. And so I'm like, I'll do this for 6 weeks. I'll give it everything I have. I'll pour my heart and soul into this. So I did 40 appointments in my first 10 days. And as you know, to me, it's a God thing. My fourth appointment, I go and I pitch my girlfriend's dad the knives. Now, Paul, the reason I pitched him the knives was he was like Mr. Generosity. He had a law firm, and he was everybody loved this guy. Like, he would buy find a deal on noodles. He'd buy a semi-load of noodles, and like everybody at church the next Sunday would walk away with like a year's supply. And I'm doing the math as a 20-year-old. I'm like, Paul, that was 40 G's on noodles. Like, yeah, lots of why? Yeah, it just didn't make sense to me. And he's like, John, I just love showing up for people that way. So I pitched him the knives before church on a Sunday, which is, if you think it's hard to sell solar insurance, try selling knives to your girlfriend's dad. Like, the weirdest, most awkward. And $1,000 knives, right? Or multi-$1,000 knives. Multi-thousand, yeah. So Paul, in his wisdom and kindness and gentle, he was just this gentle soul. Even though like he was, owned banks and all this different stuff, he didn't make me feel weird. He actually took interest. He bought a set for himself and his 3 unmarried daughters, which was a godsend, right? It's my fourth appointment. And then he comes back to me. He's like, John, I want to help you hit your goals, but I don't know what else I can buy. So a week goes by, my wheels are spinning. And I'm like, Paul's like got this law firm, but all of his clients are like, home builders, pallet shops, insurance companies, financial advisor firms, all these million and billion dollar company owners. And they're all dudes for the most part. It's Midwest. And I'm like, they're all into hunting and fishing. I'm like, maybe Paul would buy like 100 of these, $100 or $200 pocket knives that Cutco sells. So a week later, I go pitch Paul. Paul's like, he doesn't make me feel weird, but he's like, John, I don't want to order the pocket knives. I'm like, I get it. And he's like, but I do want to order something. I'm like, what's that? He's like, I want to order 100 of the paring knives. And in my head, it didn't compute again. I'm like, why would you give a bunch of CEO dudes that are, $1 million, $1 billion companies? Like, why would you give them a kitchen tool? And he said, John, the reason I have more referrals and deal flow and access is I figured out a simple truth when I was starting my law firm 35 years ago, is that's if you invest in the family, everything else seems to take care of itself.
Yeah.
So that was like the lightning bolt moment. I'm 20 years old. I'm like, I want to be Paul when I'm 60. I got 40 years to get there. And, most people were buying beer in college. I was investing $500 a month in a set or two of Cutco. And I would send it off to like the CEO of a, $200 million insurance company. I'd put a little note inside, carve out 5 minutes for me, promise to be worth your time. And I'd get meetings. And, these CEOs would be like, I walk in with my one suit I have on at 21. And they're like, are you the John Rowland that sent me the knives? I'm like, yes, sir. And they're like, I don't get it. Like, I thought you'd be like 55 and like some seasoned sales executive. Are you here to sell me knives? And I'd be like, no, sir, I'm here to help you and your 1,000 sales reps do exactly what I did to you to your top 10,000 relationships. And I would get POs for thousands of knives. And Cutco thought they were fraud. At first, they red flagged them. And I got calls from the CFO of Cutco, $300 million company. And like, what the hell are you doing with these knives? And I'm like, I'm using that as a product as a way to drive 10x referrals and deal flow and all these other things. And they're like, we're a knife company. What are you talking about? And I'm like, you're not anymore. Like, your product is perfect in this system that we're creating. And I'm just modeling it off of what I was watching Paul do. And by the time I was a senior in college, Cutco, worked with 2 million reps. We became their number one in the history of the company. And so that's when med school got put on hold. I'm like, nobody really cares about the knives. Although to this day, our agency does millions of dollars still in the knives. What people care about is they want deeper relationships. They want to influence their employees. They want to inspire their employees to recruit family and friends. They're driving towards some sort of result. And most people do transactional things in business. And they don't have I ask people, like, you have a marketing plan, a eating plan, a workout plan. What's your relationship plan? And I don't care if it's $1 million company, a $500,000 sales rep, or a $20 billion company. Like, most people have a deer in headlights when you ask them what their relationship plan is. And so that's the last 23 years, we've been teaching that and helping companies scale their thoughtfulness and put things into a system. So whether you're Google or whether you're a pro sports team or whether you're a solar company or whether you're an insurance company, almost every business rises and falls on the relationships. And most people don't have a plan on how they're going to love on, inspire, and take care of those relationships. And so people are like, they look at the giftology book and they're like, I don't care about gifts. And I'm like, great, my love language isn't gifts. If you read, Gary Chapman's book, he's a friend and mentor. My love language isn't gifting. I'm actually naturally an introvert, but I know when I give great gifts, it becomes magnetic for people to want to engage me. And most leaders don't have a plan on how they're going to do that. So that's really the focus of giftology is, if our next book will be called Rich Relationships, because that's what really people care about, and they don't understand how to do it. So that's a little snapshot.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because, and I bet people have this like epiphany as they work with you or as they read your stuff, but it starts about, the book's called Giftology, the business is called Giftology. So it's almost like it puts you in this state of like, okay, well, here's how you gift people. It's really more about what you said. It's more about relationship creation, nurturing, getting you indoors. And we have, I run this big door-to-door sales group at Sunrun. And one of our core values is make your money, right? Like, we want people to come in here. We want the place to be different because you're there. And so when I look at like your experience with Cutco, you really made your mark there, right? Like, it's one of those things where while everybody's out selling knives, you kind of saw a future maybe business and for yourself that others didn't see. I would compare it to, a lot of people spend all their time making money, but then they don't have a plan for their money. So it's like you worked so hard for what? You didn't really like put this money to work. You just, you never set up time to like manage it. And I feel like salespeople and leaders, especially, who is primarily who I work with, it's the same way with their relationships, right? Like, they spend all this time making sales or trying to get sales, but then they don't have a plan, as you said, for nurturing and continuing on furthering the relationship. I mean, the hardest part is finding the client. it should be easy then to keep the relationship alive after. And I really like, when I was reading your book, that's really what dawned on me is what you guys do is you keep the relation. It's continued commerce, right? It's continued relationship. It's continued open doors. Like your first 100 sales should be the hardest you ever get. After that, you should have this advantage of relationship management and nurturing that helps you further your business.
Yeah. Yeah. If you think about it, if every employee and every client of yours was an actively loyal sales rep for your brand. Like people confuse loyalty. They think if an employee stays, they're loyal. Like they could just be collecting a paycheck, or a client could just be like transacting. Like I buy this, you give me this. But what I realize is like if you get every single client that wants to see you win is actually talking about you when you're not in the room, at the boardroom, at the golf course, at the party, at the dinner, and they're talking and bragging about you. Like now you have all of these unpaid sales reps. That's really what word of mouth advertising is, right? But most people, they have like a referral program. Like, hey, if you refer us a client, we'll give you a $500 Amazon gift card. That's not what you want. You want somebody that wants to see you win, that wants to go open doors for you and talk about you, not because of the $500 gift card. That's actually like a tit for tat, a give to get. That's transactional in itself. And we've built our entire business. Like people are like, how'd you get 25 pro sports teams as clients? You're a farm kid. I'm like, I didn't get them. My clients went and opened those doors.
Yeah.
They weren't incentivized or paid. But like if you douse somebody in love, and Robert Cialdini's covered all of this is from an academic perspective of influence or persuasion.
Sure.
When you pour into a relationship over and over and over again, the way God's wired us is we want to, like they're part of our tribe now. We want to reciprocate. And sometimes we reciprocate like 100 times more. And so I think people are like, John, like you're talking about like wasting money or like being lavish. And it's like, no, like I'm talking about making deposits in relationships that inspire them to want to go see you win. And that's where how do you get 100 times more referrals? Well, it has to be, you can't go meet somebody's expectations. Like they spend $50,000 on solar. They expect the solar to work. Or you spend $1 million on insurance policy, you expect that insurance policy to act a certain way. It's the little things on top of the relationship that makes somebody say, oh, they're not in this just for the money. They're not in this. They actually care about me. They're in my corner. And when you do that repetitively at a world-class level, you tip the scales to where like people can't help but want to go out and brag and talk about you. And that's where I think the proactive nature of what we're talking about and having a plan versus the reactive, which is what most people do. That, they do a deal, they give a gift. They get a referral, they give a gift. Those are like, if you do that with your wife, like only on the anniversaries, birthdays, and Christmas, if that's the only time you show love to your wife, you're like neutral. You're at table stakes level. It's like when you show up for a relationship because you wanted to, not because you had to. And so you do that with enough people, with your clients or your employees, and like magic starts to happen.
Yeah. I love that. And I want to talk about, I just kept thinking about Make Your Mark as I read your book, because it's literally, it's what you do. It's how you stand out in a sea of people that are buying for the same clients. A couple principles that I've noticed is, especially successful people, they actually find joy in connecting people. I always say it's never a waste of time to connect people, right? Like we were connected, I believe, through Dave Meltzer,
David Nurse.
Oh, David Nurse. That's right. Who was connected.
I love Meltzer too.
From Meltzer is how I know Nurse. But it's like, he's getting nothing out of this connection, but he just genuinely enjoys connecting people. And I think most successful people do. I also think that, I really enjoy having a guy or a gal for things, right? Like I have this guy in town. Anytime I do anything with like TVs or anything like that, he hangs all my TV, runs all my wiring. And it's like, I probably pay him a lot for that, and I could probably figure it out myself. But he shows up, he's my guy. I've probably referred him to 30 people, right? Just because I like having the service, and then I enjoy like helping other people solve their problems. And I think most successful people think that. And so, this guy that does the AV, he could go out and knock all these businesses around us, and he could go out and knock doors in my neighborhood and say, hey, do you have any needs? Or he could just do a really good job with our relationship and 10 other relationships like that. And he's going to get a lot more because of that. You know what I mean?
Gets a lot more. You're not fighting over price.
Yeah.
It's easier. It's more fun. It's less stressful. Like there's all like, and even like David Meltzer, like you brought his name up on a podcast that's going out to thousands or hundreds. I don't know how many people will listen to this over the next 10 years.
At least 10. No.
Huh?
At least 10.
Well, regardless, the people who are connectors who solve problems, like get talked about and are thought of, like we all want to be liked, trusted, and top of mind. Like that's the trifecta, right? In business, like, well, when you're a problem solver and you're generous and you're a giver, it takes care of, like, as long as you're decent at your, like, you can't have a horrible product or service and then give great gifts or be a great connector and like you still have to have a minimum excellence level of, but there's a lot of people that are good at what they do and they're like, why don't I get more referrals? And I'm like, you're not creating a story in a moment, like to your point. You have to like create a story or a mark where people are like, wow, that becomes the trigger in the story that they tell. And so, I'm sure the guy that you refer for the AV stuff, like he's doing some of the little things he probably didn't have to make you feel VIP and special. And you're somebody like who now is like sent him 30 clients. Like most people are lucky to get 3 referrals. 30 is like out of like, nope. Like that just doesn't happen unless you're doing things at a way where people say, wow. And then like they go the extra mile. And so like, and then to have a system to do it. Like some people are good at it ad hoc and randomly, but to scale that across an organization, it doesn't tend to happen accidentally.
Well, give me your thoughts on this, because I see a lot of examples in this. I mean, I've been in direct sales for 21 years. And people literally knock doors to get their clients and they work referrals to get, their teams built and things like that. And so one thing that we've noticed, we have multiple sales channels at Sunrun. Our direct host on our only channel, and we run these promos all the time. And I bet promotion's kind of a bad word to you. It feels a certain way. Promotion almost is like, it feels anyway. And so we run this referral promotion, and the company's always like, okay, well, how much moves the needle? Is it $250? Is it $500? Is it $1,000? And what we found is the amount kind of doesn't, right? Like back to your idea of like the Starbucks gift card or the Amazon gift card, where, do I give you 3 referrals because you'll give me a $250 Amazon gift card? And would I not do that if you gave me, or would I do more if you gave me a $500? And our data shows that there's not really a number that moves that needle.
No.
So I have a friend, his name's Gret Shaw, and he did a custom kind of gifting program that, we're a Nike sponsored company. And so our sales force has special connections to Nike, and our uniforms and gear are all done by Nike. And we like street culture and shoes. So it kind of works. And so he had this idea to take this to customers, because we get boxes of Nike stuff, so much that it's like half of the stuff I'll give away, or I don't have room for it or whatever. And so I've kind of gotten used to it. And so what he started doing with his customers is, rather than giving them cash for referrals, he would take like a catalog and he would say, hey, what brands do you guys like? And, they'd say Nike or whatever. And he would say, okay, while you're filling out this contract, I'm going to go shopping with your son or your wife or whatever. And he'd pull up his iPad, maybe, what things do you like? What things? And they would pick them. And then as they would give him names or referrals, these boxes of shoes would start showing up on their door. And it's actually like a lot cheaper than what I see other people do. I see people say, I'll give you $1,000 if you give me a referral. Here's a $90 pair of shoes, and if you want the jacket. Or, I've heard of other people saying, hey, what, you have anything in your house that's like old appliances that are draining your electricity? Yeah, this fridge. Okay, well, if you can get me 3 referrals, I'll buy you a new fridge. Right? And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, even if you have the money, you want the thing. I mean, so maybe talk to me about like your philosophy on gifting. What makes good gifts? What makes bad gifts? I'm also interested in the schedule, like the kind of like Christmas schedule, like all that kind of stuff. Like, let's get into it now that you know a little bit about our world. And the mistake I see people make is cash for referrals. Like, and it's not bad, but it's not. It's a fraction of the potential, right?
Yeah, people put all gifting in the same bucket, and there's swag is different than an incentive versus there's different things. Like when you say, if you do this, you get this, that's like, hey, we're going to take you on a trip if you hit your numbers. Mm-hmm. That's not really a gift. They earn that. That's an incentive.
Okay.
Right? So like your customer that you say, hey, I'll buy your fridge or I'll buy you some Nikes. Like nothing wrong with that. But most people aren't like in tiers because they're earning what they're getting. Mm-hmm. What I've seen, I talk about in the book, Cameron Herold, the guy that, one of the top business coaches in the world, I wanted him to not just be a client. I wanted him to be a mentor, an advisor, a referral partner. And everybody and their brother wants to come at Cameron, right?
Is this the guy?
So if I said, hey, Cameron, say again?
Is he the 1-800-GOT-JUNK guy?
Yeah. So,
awesome.
So if I went to Cameron, because I heard him speak, and when I heard him speak, I was like, I need him in my corner. I found out he was coming to Cleveland, where I was living at the time. A lot of times people come to a successful person, a wealthy, affluent person, say, hey, if you give me a deal, I'll give you a percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody wants, of course, you're going to give them a percentage of a deal, right? Like a referral fee, whatever else. What I did with Cameron was I found out that he loved Brooks Brothers. That was his favorite clothing. And rather than saying, I'll give you this if you do this, I just filled his whole entire hotel room with Brooks Brothers in his size, there's like $7,000 in clothes, and said, pick out whatever you want. Like, an hour of your time is super valuable. I can't believe I'm getting the time to go hang out with you at a ball game, whatever else. And no strings attached. It was like, basically like, I appreciate, everybody says they appreciate somebody's time, but most people want their time for like a coffee. Like, I could buy my own coffee. An hour with you, like an hour of somebody's that's, a leader could be worth $10,000 or $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Cameron came into the room and saw what was going on, he came downstairs where we were hanging out, and he's like, John, whatever you want to talk about for as long as you want to talk about, I'm all ears. I've never had anybody make me feel this way. He changed 3 stories for books about the best client experience. And he started referring, when I was begging to speak for free, my first 10, 20, 30, $40,000 speaking gigs came because Cameron became my sales rep. And so I think that the incentive program can work and scale, but you're capping yourself out because you're saying, if you do this, you get this.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our relationships, 80% of the clients we're working with is, what if you just showed up for them the way that you're talking about, as a surprise and delight, which is a Ritz-Carlton concept, right? Why do people spend $1,000 to stay at the Ritz? Because they like how they feel there. It's still room, like there's little, like, they know that you like a certain kind of whiskey and it's waiting for you in the fridge, or like, it's all the surprise and delight elements. And so I think that if you can surprise and delight a client, you'll get 10 times more referrals, because it's not incentive based, it's not transaction based. It makes them feel a certain way. And most people that already have money, they really don't like incentives. They want to look good, and they want to have, like you, they want a guy. Hey, I got my solar guy. Hey, I got my jewelry guy.
Right.
Hey, I got my car guy.
Yeah.
And I think that as a sales rep, if you can start to think about, how can I reinvest in the relationship and create that moment and make that mark, you could do that once or twice, and you'll have that relationship for life. And they won't ever ask you for a cut, a referral fee, any of those things. Like, Cameron still to this day, 15, 16 years later, takes pictures of them on first class or private travel, wearing the clothes, saying, dude, I'm thinking about you.
Well,
like, it's weird, right? Like, he could buy his own jacket. He could buy his own pants.
No, I get it.
So I think that most people are not connecting to the heart level. They're just trying to say, like, what's the least I can get away with to, like, give this to get this, and they shortchange the relationship.
Do you know Todd Peterson?
No.
So he's the founder of Vivint. And he's a super generous guy. I've known him since I started my career, forever. And he used to have this jacket. And, Todd has like a personal shopper and like someone that like dresses, you know what I mean? He's kind of like, he just is like cool guy, And he had this jacket, and I remembered that he had it, and then Chester from Linkin Park had it, and it was just like this jacket. I'm like, I keep seeing this thing. What is it? And I told him once, I was like, dude, I like covet that jacket. It's the coolest jacket. And literally, I think it was like 2 or 3 years later, his wife called me and said, hey, can you stop by the house on your way home? And I was like, sure. So I stopped by, and she's like, hey, Todd wears this jacket. They don't make it anymore. I'm having a couple of them made, but he said that you liked it. And so I wanted you to pick like what leather you want this thing made out of, because he's going to give you one. And I was like, I don't even know you remembered that conversation. He's a very busy dude, right? And so I was like shocked, and I was like, this is amazing, but you have to buy me a jacket. She's like, well, he's going to get one. So I picked the leather and kind of like forgot about it. And then months and months later, it showed up, and I called it my Technicolor dream coat, because I was the chosen son. But it was funny because I've had that jacket now for 15 years, and it was expensive, but I worked for Todd for in a roundabout way, 20 years. Right. And so it was funny because a couple months ago, I was cleaning out my closet and like, moving stuff around. And I found the Technicolor Dreamcoat and I hung it up on a hanger and I took a picture of it. And I was like, dude, you don't know like how much this meant to me that you did. Like, I didn't even know that we were like friends like that. And you made me like custom clothes. And I could, to your point, I could buy my own jacket. Right. But it was one of those things that we're talking about it now. I mean, it's been forever. Right.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that, I don't know. Sometimes people think like, oh, but I'm not creative. Like, how do you come up with ideas like that? How do you make an impactful photo like Todd did with me? And I know it's what you do for a living, but what are some of like your rules? I know you have the 5% like reinvest rule, and I know you have like the times that it shows up, but what are some like tips or tactics to make it like truly impactful?
Yeah. Well, I tell people if a goat milking farm kid can get creative, like anybody can, like, because like I said before, my love language isn't gifts. So people will reach out like, John, I'm not good at this. And it's my wife's and I's 50th anniversary. I'm like, dude, she's dropped 10,000 hints over the last 50 years. A lot of it is intentionality and paying attention. That's it. Like I tell guys all the time, the guys are the worst at this. Women are better at this. Just not like God's wired women to be more, empathetic, more details. And women are just better at all things. Most of our giftologists on the agency side that do the gifting for everybody are women because they're naturally bent towards, like, they think about, like, for a wedding gift, the note means something. The wrapping means something. The selection of the item, the personalization, all those things. Whereas the guy's like, I just want to check the box and move on. And they don't think it's worth their time. What they don't realize is when you give somebody, like, you go in the Bible, like, kings would give other kings 10,000 head of cattle. Why? Because they understood the value of the relationship. Like Proverbs 18:16, a gift ushers you before kings. Everybody wants to be before the king, the Todd Petersons, but most people aren't willing to put the intentionality and thoughtfulness. So to me, 80% of what we're doing for a client, people are like, I'm taking care of these guys. And they're like, what do they like? They like bourbon or golf or sports or whatever. I'm like, I don't care what they like. Are they married? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, well, there's your problem. Like, if you want to make somebody, feel special, take care of the people around the people. And we call it the inner circle. 80% of our budget for a client, whether it's employee, whatever else, I'm like, I want to take care of the person around the person. And there's 4 buckets to that. It's the team or the assistant, chief of staff. It's their spouse or significant other. It's their kids and it's their pets. So in the Nike example, if I was going to do something for somebody and use Nike, like, I can buy my own tennis shoes, but the person has a son or daughter and I can do something cool for the son or daughter and make the guy or gal look like the hero to their kids. Or, like, we've had people are like, hey, I'm, worth $1 billion. I'm like, do they have pets? They're like, yeah. I'm like, you could spend $500 on the pet or you could spend $50,000 on the person, on the CEO. I'd rather invest $500 in the pet and do a custom dog bowl or with their name or like do some cool stuff that they probably don't have. And if you make them if you honor the people around the people, now all of a sudden you have lift because everybody tries to take care of that person that likes wine. They send them wine. Well, they can buy their own wine. They have a whole cellar full of it. Same with bourbon or the same with jackets or whatever else. So the inner circle is a part of it.
Interesting.
The other thing is the amount of stuff that people send out that is like, they're like, hey, I'm going to send this out to my clients, my employees. I'm like, is it a relationship or transaction? They're like, oh, it's all relationship. I'm like, well, why are you putting your logo on it? And they're like, well, I want them to remember where it came from. I'm like, if I give you a Rolex, do I have to put giftology on it for you to remember where the Rolex came from? And they're like, well, heck no. And I'm like, great, because it's world class. You'll never forget where that Rolex came from. Same thing with a jacket. A logo makes something that could be a personal gift, takes it and makes it corporate and makes it really a manipulation. You're giving something to somebody hoping that they will wear it or use it and other people will see it. So you're trying to turn your relationship into a billboard, which is the ultimate manipulation. And so people are like, hey, I want to give gifts to my employees. I'm like, if you give them a nice Nike or Lululemon jacket with the logo, that's fine. But just know that's a uniform. It's not a gift. As soon as you put the logo on it, you're turning that into something that's not a gift. I don't care how nice it is. And so oftentimes the little things around that. Another thing, a handwritten note goes out with every single gift that we do. And people are like, I just want to automate it on Amazon. I'm like, you don't automate relationships, not with wealthy people for sure. Yeah. Really all people. the handwritten note with the Rolex is what provides the context, the meaning, the thoughtfulness, why you gave it to them, the story. If you don't have the handwritten note with the thing, with the artifacts, because I hate the word gift because it makes people think of like a Harry and David basket or some cheese ball thing. I like words like artifact or heirloom because that signifies like meaning and strength and longevity. And so those are some of the things. The last thing I'll just say, to this day, people will, like the New York Times asked us, what's the hot new sexy gift? And I laughed. I said, knives are number one. And they said, dude, you did that in college. Like I said, well, even today, whether somebody makes 50 grand a year or $50 million a year, where do most people gather with their loved ones to celebrate?
Yeah.
And they're like, in their home. I said specifically, where at? So where most people invest most of their money? In a home. The hub of the house, the kitchen. Like that is the central point. And whether you're Jewish, atheist, Muslim, Christian, what do? You break bread, you celebrate with your loved ones. If you're really close with somebody in business, you invite them to your house and you break bread there. Whether you're in Africa, whether you're in Utah. And I'm like, if you can get something into somebody's inner sanctum, into their home, that's why I love knives and anything that's kitchen or hospitality or family related, because now, like the knives you bought for your wife, my guess is she probably or your family uses that once a day. And I want to be top of mind as a marketer, right? Like as a relationship builder. If I can get something in your hands that you use once a day for the next 10 years, that's 3,600 thoughts and positive impressions with all of your family and friends and all the other ballers that you hang out with, right? All the referral sources and CEOs and the Todd Petersons. And so like to me, the couple square feet of real estate on somebody's countertop is the most valuable real estate on the planet, because now it's a conversation piece. It's a trigger to talk about people. It's a reminder. And so we still do these crazy knife sets, but now instead of doing like one knife that I could afford in college, like if we want to get the attention of like a Ed Milet or a Todd Peterson, I'll send them I'll send you a video after we're done. But we had John Gordon, who's one of the top speakers in the world, send a gift to Dabo Sweeney, the head coach of Clemson. Well, it was a $10,000 gift because it was in a special wood box with a video screen called a strong box. And all 37 of the knives were engraved with either scripture verses or Daboisms. And so now his family, loved ones, great grandkids someday will be using these tools for the next 500 years, and there'll be conversations around those pieces. And he can buy his own knife set, but not that way.
Sure.
Like now there's a story and there's a trigger and all these other things. So it's not so much the thing, it's about all the things that you're doing with it.
Yeah.
That make it either land or feel like just more crap showing up from Amazon. And that's, I think people get hung up on.
Yeah. It's intention, right? Like it's funny because I'm kind of like a self-proclaimed like minimalist at heart. Like I don't really keep stuff, and, from a career in sales, you get a lot of stuff. You get a lot of like things. There's a lot of awards. There's a lot of like plaques, a lot of like trophies, medallions, whatever. And it's funny when I look around at the things I keep, and they're generally not necessarily the most expensive things, but they're the things that mean most to me. Like even like looking around this office, you don't see any sales awards or leadership awards or any kind of thing like that, or like, funds that got raised that I was part, like none of that. But there are like little things that somebody got me. They're like, dude, I was at this shop in this mountain town and I saw this and I thought of you, or I've seen you have these things. This reminded me of you or whatever. And those are like, it's like my place, like anything on shelves is full of that kind of thing. And so I think that people inherently, that's the kind of stuff that they want to hold on to, right? That's the kind of stuff that means something. It's the kind of stuff that like enhances a relationship. And it's not just, again, your book doesn't talk about, if you do this, I promise you it'll help you grow your business. It does, but it's not about that. It's more, this is how you make meaningful relationships that'll make you happy, that you'll enjoy. And the side effect is, there's a lot of business that comes from it, but it's kind of a better way to live. I was thinking about this last night actually in kind of preparation for our conversation, but I had this high-ranking like investment banker guy that came into my life that I met a little bit ago, and he's given me a lot of time like lately. Like he's like taking phone calls with me that are much longer than they should have been, and kind of done like it's just kind of a relationship that came in me. And I was thinking about what his time is likely worth, because in your book you talk about like, a good rule of thumb is how much do you spend on a certain person if you're going to give them a gift or a thank you or something like that, to consider how much his time is worth. When I think of what this person's time is worth, I'm not going to get him a gift that's worth a technical hour at this time, because it would be kind of crazy. It'd be weird. Like, here's some Wolf appliances or something. But it did have me think of the one thing that it's funny, because the couple thing he has is when we were on the phone call, he's always talking about his two dogs and how his younger dog always beats up on the older dog. And I was like, dude, and it's just listening and thinking about it and sending something there. I need to figure that piece out. But it does have you thinking different when you try to be intentional about what would connect with this person and show them that I'm actually great at the type of stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. The 5% rule, if you think about, we do anywhere between 5 and 15% reinvestment back end based upon the value of the relationship. That goes for all relationships. And people are like, well, that relationship, that deal or that client's worth $1 million. I'm like, well, then, you don't have to invest $100,000. That's 10%. But it gives you takes the blinders off of saying that I could, and I would still be up $900,000, right? Like, this isn't just woo-woo stuff. This is like reinvesting back into relationships, which means you get to keep 95, 90, 85%. And it just opens up the door of for that type of relationship, you might say, if they ever raise money for charity, I may be willing to go all in instead of doing the token $5,000 check. I might be willing to invest.
Yeah.
Based upon what they poured into me, $100,000 or $200,000 but if you can make it a math equation, now you can start to talk to your CFO and your COO and make it woven in. So it's a metric, and it's based upon real numbers versus what most people do, which is very flippant. Like, they wait till Christmas and they say, oh, we had a good year, we should probably say thank you. And they just pick, we have 20,000 relationships in the database and we have $20,000, and they divide it. And I guess everybody's getting a $1 calendar. And it's not based on any real numbers. It wasn't based on any strategy or intentionality. It was just based upon a reactionary, we need to do something.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of that unintentional. What I don't realize is all 20,000 of those people, it'd probably be better to do nothing than to send them a calendar, which basically says, I don't really appreciate you. You don't really matter to me. You're just a number. You're just a check the box. And I think there's a lot of those unintentional, you're annoying, frustrating, pissing off. You're devaluing people.
No, that's true.
And as a leader, with your employees, your clients, your centers of influence, your mentors, your suppliers, the last thing what we want to do is devalue physically. Put a physical thing into existence that says, you don't matter, I don't know you. It's a slap in the face. Now, they'll never tell you that. You'll never get the note that says, I thought less of you as a person when I got your bottle of wine. I don't even drink. Right?
Yeah.
But in your head, you're thinking, this person really doesn't care about me.
I'm going to return your handwritten note with another handwritten note that says, I was offended, but no. I actually, I'll give you an example of that, because I'm a part of this. I did this investment, and it hasn't been great. It was supposed to be really good. It hasn't been great. But they send these little gifts every so often. And when I get them, it's my thought, and I've actually have shared it to a lot of people, and I'm like, hey, stop sending me stuff and make the fun. Stop sending me trinkets and put this extra whatever back into the fund. So you can do it wrong, right? You literally can. And the other thing that I thought was interesting in your book is you talked about, basic ideas. Is the gift about you or is the gift about them, right? Because sometimes I get things that are so distinctly that person that I'm like, I would look ridiculous in this, but I see that you like it. Maybe talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I take things back to relationships that most people can understand, which is a marriage relationship or a significant other relationship. That, you think about a guy that likes the outdoors, maybe his wife doesn't. And the guy's like, I got you a 4-wheeler for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
We laugh about that, right? Oh, that's obviously not a gift for her, it's a gift for him.
Have you seen sorry to cut you off. Have you seen there's a Simpsons episode where Homer gets Marge a bowling ball and he engraves his name on it because he's like, she's just going to give it to me. And then she ends up bowling and loving it. But it's literally like that. It's you gave.
Yeah, we do.
She loves.
Yeah, I have seen that episode. It's so, but in business, like I said, the logo, people shop with their own eyes. So a lot of times people are like, I like steak, so I'm going to send steaks to my clients. And I'm like, you like steak, but is that going to land with your client or your employee or whatever else? But most people have a tendency to shop with their own eyes. And whether that's clothes or art or jewelry or food. And I don't like food in general, like when people are giving gifts, because for multiple reasons. One is you like something they may not, or there's so many ways to either offend people, or like there's so many diets and so many things that people are allergic to. So you love like peanut brittle and you send it out to all your clients. They may have peanut allergies. They may be on a cleanse, a keto diet, and you spent $50 or $100 or $200, and you're like, oh, it's way cheaper than the expensive, name the thing, Rolex, whatever. But the person gets one impression from that. Whether they love it or hate it, they consume it and it's gone. And so I want things that have like some staying power that they're going to use for the next 10 years or 20 years. And so, but the shopping with your own eyes, like it's just, or it's like people try to hide it. They'll like send out jackets or like things, and it's in their company colors. Like it's obvious what you're trying to like do. And like, it's not like a gift. You think about going to a wedding, you'd make the gift entirely about the couple. Like on the beautiful Tiffany's vase, you never put compliments of Ernst & Young. You put, their name and their family name and maybe their favorite Bible verse or whatever it is. And so if you can think in business terms, the same way you would act in a personal, like with your best friend or your mom or your dad or your wife or your husband, because at the same time, they're all humans. We forget in business, we're dealing with humans. And if you want to connect with a human, you need to make the thing all about them. A gift by its very nature is about the recipient, not about the giver. And we confuse that all the time in business. And we have egg on our face, but we don't even realize it.
Yeah. Isn't that true also? I mean, you're not just you don't just run a gift business, right? You're a keynote speaker, you're an author, you've got tons and tons of interviews out there. But I found that the same principle is true when you're giving like a presentation. Like I've felt it a lot, but like over the past couple of years, I've been able to articulate that like the ones that I really enjoy are the ones that are for the audience. We hire a lot of speakers, right? And the ones that I don't enjoy are the ones that are about them, right? Where it's like, you haven't thought about making this an experience for the people you're speaking to. You're just doing this. This is a you show. You know what I mean? But I found the same principles are very, very true, right? Like, and you can see you can feel the intent behind like a properly managed relationship where it's like, a lot of like your gifting is, hey, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere, but I thought of you and here it is. And then truly no strings attached, right? Like I think that's a real test to kind of like check and like keep that true. Because by human nature, it's like, hey, if I'm a football coach, it's like, here's a Denver Broncos memorabilia. Like it's hard to not be excited about the thing that is your whole life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. The more you can make it about the audience in any way, shape or form, it's like, we love the sound of our own name. We love when people like make things relevant to our industry or our situations or our problems. And so, I mean, it's what Donald Miller's story brand, like, the audience is the hero, right? Like that you want to make them, you're the guide that's helping the hero succeed. And that's what we all, like we all want to be the hero in our own story.
Talk about lessons learned the hard way in figuring out your philosophy in gifting as it pertains to relationship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that ties back to the earlier conversation on people shop with their own eyes. Like what I didn't realize, like I was poor going into the engagement, right? So I was like trying to make up for being insecure. And I had blinders on. I was not making it about her. I was making it about like, I wanted to make up for things, wanted to create this like movie event that would be on Oprah someday and that would go viral. Like I literally in my head, I was like, this is going to be a movie someday.
Yeah.
Right?
So
like this is going to be
a brief version of the story for those that haven't read the book.
Yeah. So the very short version is like, I'm broke. My wife, like we're dating from afar. Relationship is challenged because we're from afar. I'm poor, trying to like save the business from going bankrupt. It's like, 15, 16 years ago. During 2007 when everything crashed and I had an assistant that was stealing and when IRS audit, like everything that could go wrong went wrong. And so like, I'm like, for the engagement, I want to like, exceed expectations because I was a bad boyfriend. The first year of dating, I was trying to save myself. I was not thinking about her at all. And so I basically created our favorite movie, I'm a Hopeless Romantic, was The Notebook. And so I'm like, I'm going to create our own notebook. So I write like 80 pages of our story together. And I'm like, that's not enough. I'm like, what if my brother just graduated from film school. What if we created like recreated the movie, The Notebook, and I start going, my mind just starts going, right? Like creativity wise, I'm just like, what's the most I could do here? And so the plan was for us to be on the plane together, but not to realize it. I would be dressed up like the 90-year-old dude from The Notebook. If you've never seen the movie, it's this love story, and he's telling the story back to his wife. And every day for 5 minutes, she has Alzheimer's. She remembers who he is. But it's this crazy movie. And so I looked like the dude from The Notebook. I looked like I gained 100 pounds. I had false teeth, bifocal glasses, Brute cologne, NASCAR jacket, all that. And the plan was she would be reading The Notebook, not realizing she's beside me. And at the end of it starts talking about, will you love me when I, maybe gained weight, or I smell like Brute cologne and all this stuff. And then I crack open the notebook at the end, and I'd sealed it like Shawshank Redemption style. The ring was in the back of this notebook, and I proposed at 30,000 feet, and we would land in a stretch Hummer with her family. My family were all flown in, and our 200 closest friends would have this celebration. So that was the plan. The unfortunate thing is I go to get on the plane, and I'm in disguise, and I collapse.
So you made it through security as you, and then got into disguise, which is a bad idea in general.
Yeah. You can't go through. My ID is obviously not going to match up. This is, years ago. But yeah. So I fly into the airport. I'm past security. I go into the bathroom. My brother transforms me in 3 hours with makeup and latex and all this stuff to look like a 90-year-old dude. But when I go to get on the plane, I collapse. My brother thinks I'm just, because he's trying to videotape it like in the corner. He thinks I'm just hamming it up, but they roll me over, and there's blood everywhere, and I'm unconscious. And Lindsay's getting ready to get on the plane, doesn't realize that's me until they say call 911. And then guys, other pilots come, they start cutting my clothes off, they pull the defibrillator off the wall, and my wig comes off and all the stuff comes off, and she realizes it's me, but I'm unconscious. So she melts down. They put the pads on my chest. They hit the button because it says to shock me. I'm bouncing off the floor, projectile vomiting. They can't stabilize me. They put me in the ambulance, and she's not even sure if I'm alive. She's in the cop car, and she finds out I was going to propose. So she's not sure if her, hopefully, fiance is not even alive or not. So they take me to the hospital. They run every test under the sun. They put me in the ICU. And next morning I wake up, and basically I had a low blood sugar seizure that I thought was hilarious. Because I almost died, but I didn't, because I was like Romeo and Juliet, but I don't die. Yeah. She's like in shell shock, PTSD. And the whole thing that happened was because I was on this crazy, like every year I try a different cleanse or a different whatever. And this was like super low sugar, with these beads and all this stuff. And I basically had a low blood sugar seizure that the machine misdiagnosed and shocked me when I shouldn't have been shocked. So I very much could have died. So I thought the story was even better because of that. Lindsay, I would go tell it on stage, and she would be like so pissed at me. And for 4 years of our marriage, I didn't understand why. And then it hit me, like a mentor asked me, he's like, John, what's Lindsay's perfect day? And I'm like, she'd want to know about what outfit to wear like 6 months in advance and all this other stuff. And I'm like, it's the worst. And he's like, does she like surprises? And I'm like, oh my gosh, she hates surprises. And it all like crystallized in my head. Like everything I did to that was horribly the exact opposite of what she would have wanted. And so I almost died, almost ruined our marriage. But eventually I went and apologized. I'm like, I made this whole thing that should have been about you. I made it about me. And, will you please forgive me? And so I had to get her permission to even put the story in the book. There's still a wound there for her. Yeah. Everybody thinks it's awesome and funny, and crazy. But for her, it's still like one of her worst days of her life.
It's a great insight though. And it's wild because it's like, I can picture her like being confused, being flattered, being pissed, being scared, like, and
every emotion.
And at the airport, which is the worst place to have any kind of emotion. But it's a great insight and like extreme example of the things we sometimes do, right? Like obviously you won't have like a blunder like that likely in a business relationship, but to some small degree, I think the ability to ask yourself, like, is this for them? Like, am I making an experience? But I actually really appreciate you putting it in the book because it's wild, man. Like when I was reading it, I was like, this just keeps getting absolute worst case scenario.
And it's all like, I mean, she'll validate, like there's nothing in there that's hyperbole. It's all like, it just went sideways in every way possible. And I put a lot of energy and intention into making it amazing. And if it had worked out, it probably still, like, she probably would have liked it. But the fact is that that's not really what she wanted. She wanted like a walk on the beach, just the two of us, no fanfare.
Yeah.
She wasn't married me for my money. Like, I was broke as a joke. Like, she just wanted to start a life together, and I wanted the story. I wanted almost ruined it all.
Well, I appreciate you telling it, because it gave me and my wife an experience when we read it. So if nothing else, there you go. Well, man, hey, I've enjoyed like learning more about your philosophy. I've enjoyed the book. Where can people hear more about you? Where can they get their own ideas on how to manage this part of their business better?
Yeah, well, I would say before you go buy the book, a lot of times people ask like, "Hey, John, just give me like the top 10 gifts to give," and I'm like, "Here, how about the top 10 worst gifts to avoid giving?" Like, most people would be in the top 5% of gift givers if they just avoid like food, alcohol, gift cards. Your audience can go download at the Givers with an S, thegiversedge.com. They can download not only the top 10 worst, but we also like categorize like, here's the top 5 articles that we've written in like Forbes and Inc. and those kind of places. So they, if you would just follow that, you don't even need the book. The book goes into detail if you're like, hey, relationships matter. I want a system. I want a process. I want to go deeper. But starting with the freebies, and then from there, if you want to, dive into Amazon is where you're going to find the book. I think it's up to like 1,300 ratings at this point. Wow. And, there are talks of eventually writing another book here in the next couple of years, but really Giftology's been out for 7 years, and it's still like new for most people because it's a concept they've never really thought of before.
Well, I agree. And it's deeply helpful in sales, leadership, and relationships in general. So everybody read Giftology, check out the resources that John mentioned. And John, thanks so much for joining us, man. And it took us a while to line this up. So thank you so much for being on the show, and wish you more continued success, man.
Thanks, Ty.
If you're listening to this and interested in joining our teams, DM us on Instagram at Run the League.
What are you waiting for? Run the league, shoot us a DM, and let's get going.